And basically, you need to be stubborn on your vision, because otherwise it'll be too easy to give up. But you need to be very flexible on the details, because as you go along pursuing your vision, you'll find that some of your preconceptions were wrong.
Welcome back to Thinking Critical. This is Wes, and there's been a lot of consternation in the comic book community about a recent Indiegogo campaign where it appears that the creator lost all the funds and he never ended up backing the book. And I wanted to address the situation, in my own way, and maybe talk about how customers can protect themselves. So I brought in my expert, my good friend that's fulfilled many campaigns on time and always does a very professional campaign, to talk about how customers can protect themselves, using Indiegogo and Kickstarter. Tim Lim, how you doing?
I'm doing well. Thank you for having me back on, Wes.
Yeah, I appreciate you coming. I know you're feeling a little bit under the weather, but this is a pretty hot button issue. It's something I know we're both passionate about. We don't want people to feel like they got ripped off, or basically outright get ripped off. And it appears that the creator of Detective Dead, I believe his online handle is Critias. I don't know the guy, and my assumption is that he came in to Detective Dead with the intention of running a smooth professional campaign and fulfilling all of his backers and getting their books. But somewhere along the way, it appears to have fallen apart. It looks like maybe he spent some of the funds on other campaigns, memorabilia, things of that nature. It doesn't look good. I didn't back the project. Otherwise, the tone of this video would be a lot different. I would definitely be more angry, and I definitely feel for the customers who are angry, because it does appear that, maybe you got ripped off, or maybe in time you will get refunded, but it doesn't appear that's going to be very soon. What were your initial thoughts on this before we talk about your 7 things customers can do to protect themselves?
No, I completely agree. And if nothing more, this video, in a way, is not really directed towards creators. It's directed towards customers. So there's that old Latin phrase, caveat emptor, which means customer beware. And it's just the idea that for any type of business transaction, there are 2 people who are involved in it. You have the person who's supplying the product, and then you have the customer. And I think that as far as our model is concerned, everything is focused on the customer satisfaction angle. But part of that satisfaction is also the risk that the customer takes, especially with something like crowdfunding. A lot of people want to compare it to the retail model, but it's not really apropos, because in the retail model, for example, if I'm interested in the comic, I don't really pay the money up front to a store. I basically put it on a list, and then when it arrives, it arrives. So if a book is late, it's no problem because I haven't paid for it. In the crowdfunding model, you pay the money up front. So there's already this kind of investment that you put into it, and you hope that it's going to be delivered on time, or at least within a reasonable frame. So I hope this video is instructive to your listeners in terms of things that they can watch out for, and sort of red flags to make sure that they're safe and that their transactions are secure.
Absolutely, and that's why I have you here. I know you're an honest broker. You're one of the crowdfunders that I personally trust and back, and I trust your system, and you've let me in on the details on how your operation works, and I'm very impressed, to be completely honest. And I knew that's why you'd be the perfect person to talk about this. So you gave me 7 things that customers can do to protect themselves when going into a crowdfunding, going to support a crowdfunded comic book. Number 1 is track record.
Sure. By track record, I mean, are they first-time creators? Because if they are first-time creators, obviously, that can be a detriment, because it means that you're an unknown quantity, and people will be a little bit more skeptical, regardless of how good your book looks, simply because they don't know what to expect from you. However, if you are a creator, or if you're dealing with a creator who has been around for a while, there's a couple things to look at, such as their ability to put out a product on time. If they're pros, there's articles and comic databases and even timelines that will tell you if they were late, or if they were out of work for a while in the industry. If they've been out of work from the industry for a while, obviously that can be a red flag, because it's like, well, why? Why all of a sudden are they popping back up? What was it that made them unhireable in the first place? So you want to make sure that you do your own research in terms of who they are, and in terms of how long they've been around and their ability to put out product on time.
That's a great suggestion. Do you have a specific resource that they should go to, like a website?
It used to be Comic Book DB, but I think they've since shut down. But I think that there's like Comic Zine, and there's some other places that actually have those timelines of I don't know what you'd call it, I guess bibliographies, where it actually lists creators' credentials as far as the things that they've worked on.
Going along with that is another thing that you mentioned to watch out for is creator anonymity.
And that kind of ties into it as well, because an anonymous account is a lot harder to report to authorities for potential fraud than a known individual who can't hide or change their name later on down the line. When you see an anonymous handle, now I'm a pretty free speech advocate, which means that I think that anonymity is a good thing, but it's a give and take, because you are protecting yourself, and perhaps the work that you're working on can be put out in the way you intended to, but it also means that there's always this level of remoteness and distrust between the creator and the customer, because if something goes south, I can't just tell the FBI or whoever to go investigate this random handle on the internet. There are so many ways to cover your tracks, and depending on the workload of authorities, they might not even have the manpower or even have the time to want to devote to finding out what went wrong or any potential fraud that occurred. So you want to make sure to do your research before committing to pre-ordering or backing a book from someone who's an unknown quantity.
You wouldn't want to get into a business arrangement with someone if you didn't even know who they were. And if you do, you're certainly taking an amount of risk along with that.
Right, absolutely.
Okay, the third thing that you said that customers should be watching out for is completion rate, as far as how far along is this campaign in production? Are all the pencils done? If it's 48 pages, are 24 pages already done? Is it colored? That type of thing, right?
Yeah, and this is one that just popped up recently. I was on Kickstarter and Indiegogo looking at a couple of books, and some of them actually had this kind of double whammy where it was an unknown creator, but the work looked solid. But I noticed something: the work was not listed in terms of how much of it is done. I mean, most crowdfunding will say 90% of the book is done. We need your help finishing the remaining 10%, whatever it might be. So any crowdfunded book, and this is advice goes for customers and for creators. Any crowdfunded book should include the stats of the book, how far it is to being done. If the book is 100% complete, obviously there's a higher percentage of people who will be satisfied because they're assuming that the book is going to be arriving to them on time. All that you're really paying for is the money up front to have it shipped to you. It's essentially complete. So there's a higher likelihood of it being actually delivered. The other thing you want to look at is the price to page ratio. For example, if you have a $35 book that's only 24 pages, and let's say it's going to be delivered in 8 months, that should be a huge red flag, because it's a higher price for the book per page and more time than should be spent on realistically for the product itself. So if the book isn't finished or needs many months or a year to complete, despite being so expensive yet being so short, that should tell you something automatically. Like there's something going on here that's amiss, and it needs to be answered for.
Another interesting thing would be if someone had a 108-page book and they're saying they're going to be done in 2 months. Like, that is a very short amount of time to be able to actually complete that much artwork.
Yes, absolutely. Works the opposite way too. If they're saying that the book is like $20, that's 100 pages, that's a really good price point. But if they're also saying that the book is going to be done in 2 months and yet they only have 60 pages complete, either they work really fast or they're underestimating their numbers. So that means that you have to be understanding on your part, or it means that you have to start questioning them and their ability to predict their own speed of delivery.
Could definitely be an indication of a novice or someone who's actually never actually produced a book before. Number 4 on your list was samples. People should have samples of the artwork, what it's going to look like when it's completed. Who is the colorist going to be? The art team, correct?
Yep, absolutely. By samples, I mean, does a book look like it's nearly complete? The best campaigns, with the goal of meeting deadlines, they'll often have finished work to show. They basically took pages from the book and sampled them. If the pages are not lettered, that's okay. It happens a lot because you have some spoiler-heavy material. So even if you have a dynamic page, you want to take the lettering out so that the reader is not spoiled as to what is happening in the plot. But the art itself should be presentable. Now, if you see a lot of things like sketches and pinups, you have to be very, very skeptical of that, because a lot of that's preliminary work. And as an artist, working on comics, I will a lot of times do things like character designs, pinups, and things like that before I even start working on the book because I want references. That should not count. And I've seen that time and time again on late campaigns where people will say, "Well, this campaign looks great," and you'll look at the preview and it's like, well, it's just nothing but pinups. These aren't
It's
actually
concept
pages
art.
from the book. Yeah, concept art, precisely.
So yeah, definitely make sure that when you're looking at these campaigns, you're looking at the material they're presenting. Does it look like it's nearly complete? Things of that nature. Don't be, depending on campaigns that just have sketches and things like that. Number 5 on your list of ways customers can protect themselves is expenditure. After the campaign, how are creators handling the money? Obviously, that kind of falls in with what happened with Detective Dead.
Yeah, so basically it's after the campaign, how are the creators handling your funds? And I'm going to actually put another item in with this, which is just basically the post-campaign etiquette. Because if you start seeing these creators and they're just posting pictures of luxury items that they bought, and it's something that they are not used to doing, that should tell you that something is kind of strange, because it means that this is obviously not coming out of their pocket because it's not something that they were doing before. There's a heavy likelihood that's coming out of the coffers of the funds that they raise. So you should be, inquiring as to whether or not your money is going to a project or someone's piggy bank as some sort of priority. The other thing too is that if basically someone ghosts you, so let's say they're very active on social media and then immediately after the campaign ends, it's like they vanish off the face of the planet. That is not good either, because ideally the campaign is not really finished until the fulfillment is in high gear, and that should pretty much start immediately. So whether that be posting progress reports where they're showing like artwork almost on a weekly basis of what they're doing, or just keeping a constant flow of updates, that's good. I mean, it tells backers where you are and that what they're supporting is going to a good cause. I mean, a perfect example of this is like George Alexopoulos. He was, I think, a few weeks late on the Mary Sue, but he literally posted every day with like an apology saying, "Day 3 of me being late. Here's what I'm doing." And I don't think he got any angry feedback whatsoever, because he basically was able to instill a lot of trust into his audience.
Transparency is definitely the best policy. People want to know, what's the status? Why aren't things exactly where we're expecting them? That's a very good point. The number 6 tip that you have for customers to protect themselves, fool me once. Hold the creators to their deadlines. If they extend it once, that should be the only extension. What are your thoughts on that one?
Yeah, so number 6 is fool me once. Once you extend a deadline, you have to hold the creator to that date. It happens all the time. I mean, for example, for our first crowdfunding campaign, we were late by 3 weeks. And part of that was because I had the artwork completely finished. Brett Smith was our colorist, and I made sure to give him the time he needed, but I estimated it pretty much exactly to when I thought it would need to be done. And we were accurate in terms of the whole work being done, shipped, and printed by November. However, what I didn't assume, or I didn't factor in, was that the patch printer that we were using, I had given them almost 4 months ahead of time to do it. And because I'd never used them before, again, taking my own advice here, when you have like an unknown quantity, I just assumed that would be the easiest job, and it turns out it wasn't. So that was a huge headache. So that put us behind by 3 weeks, but also meant that I could recalibrate, readjust, and actually give another deadline. And this time we made it. So in this example, when you hold the creator to the date, they should have, by the second go around, a better estimate of when they're going to deliver. By that time, they should have already asked people, had gathered some opinions as to when they're going to be able to ship on time. If they change the date a second time, they clearly have no concept of time management, and therefore they can't accurately project a completion date with confidence, or they're trying to stall for time. You should notify your credit card company immediately if you can't get a refund in 7 days. And I say 7 days because creator could be on vacation. Now, like an average person will go on vacation for 7 days. If a creator can't get back to you in 7 days with an answer for a refund, chances are they're taking a prolonged vacation. And that's a major red flag. So they're either on vacation or they're purposely dodging you. So they're both wasting your time and your money. And at that point, you don't give them the benefit of doubt the second time around. Go ahead and report them. Try the best you can to get your money back.
Yeah, that's definitely a sign that the campaign and fulfillment is definitely not progressing exactly the way they planned, and maybe it's not the smoothest crowdfunding campaign ever. So the last one, I think this one was really interesting. This is something I never actually thought of, and you say you should ask for refunds ahead of time. Can you explain that one?
Yeah, a lot of people have different refund policies, and we were discussing this not too long ago about some people that you backed, and you can ask a lot of times, hey, there's something going on here. I'd like a refund. It's like no refunds. Well, you're kind of stuck because if they say no refunds, what can you do? Really, at that point, the one thing you can do is talk to your credit card company. So what you can do is if there's any degree of skepticism, if you're not having this addressed in the FAQ section of a campaign, ask them. By that time, like during the campaign running, they want to make money. They want your business, which means that they're going to be very receptive to questions. If you ask them, what's your refund policy? They should be able to tell you. And depending on whether or not it's to your liking, you can screenshot it. Make sure that you save it in your archives. And that way, if you have to bring it up to a credit card company or PayPal or whoever to dispute it, you have a tangible form of kind of a written agreement saying that this is what was guaranteed or this was promised. It makes them accountable. So it means that if there are nefarious reasons for them not giving a refund, it means that they can't dodge it. And it gives you peace of mind knowing that you can invest your money wisely into someone that you feel like you can trust.
Tim, you've now crowdfunded through both Indiegogo and Kickstarter, the two main platforms for people to do crowdfunding comic books. What are their refund policies? Do they actually have those in place? And is that something people should be looking out for when they're looking at a platform?
The refund policy on Kickstarter, I'm going to have to take another look at, but I'm pretty familiar with the one on Indiegogo. Indiegogo actually implemented this rule late last year where they basically keep a percentage of your total profits and they hold it for a certain number of months until your fulfillment is complete, and then they give those funds back to you. But they hold those funds specifically for the purpose of refunds. And I know this for a fact because it happened on my campaign and with SoulFinder. It's written on the spreadsheet where it says that they break everything down, showing what the gross is, what the net is, and what's subtracted out of it. And over a period of time, after a few months, you're just going to suddenly get an amount in your bank. And it's basically like this is the deposit that was withheld for incidentals. So Indiegogo is pretty good with that as far as like your general refunds are concerned. They're assuming that you're
going. A campaign is active, correct?
It is while the campaign is active. Actually, it's while it's ended. Indiegogo used to have ended and permanently ended, and now it just seems like they have ended. But basically, they monitor your campaign to see your fulfillment status. And I think so far with the two campaigns that we've had since this has been implemented, they were able to give these funds to us after we fulfilled. I am not sure as to late campaigns as to when those refund or when that deposit is actually shot back to the creator, because obviously we've been on time for all of our campaigns, so the time period has been rather short in terms of when we got it. But just to give an example, SoulFinder fulfilled in November, but Douglas Ernst did not get a deposit in his bank until January. So it's about 2 months after the campaign is finished. So I don't know if it's an arbitrary time that's decided by Indiegogo, or if it's just withheld for a certain amount of time that's already predetermined before you even launch a campaign. But it's there, which is good because it means that for 10% of your total funds, if there are emergencies where someone wants a refund for whatever reason, it's there.
So customers aren't at the whims of the creator. If there's a chance that they can get a refund even after the campaign is closed, if they don't think it's been fulfilled on time.
Correct. Potentially. And obviously in the cases of more severe cases where no one is getting a product, obviously it's going to be harder to refund all of that money because by then all the money is already flushed to your creator. Indiegogo, even if they hold on to 10%, they can't refund 100% of it.
Tim, thank you so much for the information. That's a lot of good, solid tips and advice for the viewers as far as if they want to back great Indiegogo and Kickstarter campaigns. There's a lot of stuff out there. There are a lot of people entering, into that space, and you definitely need to be looking out for yourself and make sure that you're finding the right campaigns for you to where you don't get burned by the creator or maybe end up with a product that you don't want. Is there anything else that you wanted to talk about before we wrap this up?
There are so many good projects out there, and I'd like to think that by and large, especially on larger platforms, that the majority of creators who actually fulfill on time or in a timely manner actually outweigh the people who are delinquent. So I don't think that one or two bad cases should stop you from supporting projects that look promising. I just think that, again, caveat emptor, do your research ahead of time, ask around, and make sure you do your homework before investing in someone who could potentially burn you in the long run.
All right, Tim. So I know you have a campaign going on right now. How long is Common America going to be available on Kickstarter?
Kamen America is going to be available until next Friday. So not this Friday, but the following one is going to be the last day of the campaign. We're limiting it to 700 physical copies, and as of me checking just an hour ago, we only have 48 left. So if you want to get on that campaign, now's your chance. People have been asking about the Indiegogo. We will be launching an Indiegogo campaign, but not until the funds from Kickstarter have been divested and until fulfillment has begun on it. And that is because we want to really stick to the rules that Kickstarter has down. They don't really want you to do anything new until you've begun your fulfillment on their side of things. And they also like to be the first to have access to your project. So we're going to honor that just because they've been treating us so nicely to, for our first time being on their platform. So if Common America goes on Indiegogo, actually it's not really if, it's when, it'll probably be 21 days after Kickstarter is over, or sometime in late April, early May. And that will be a 21-day campaign, if I'm not mistaken.
There will be a link to the Kickstarter campaign if you're interested in that, in what Tim and his creative partner Mark Pellegrini are selling. Thank you so much for joining me and providing all this information. I really appreciate it, Tim.
My pleasure, anytime.
If you enjoyed this video, please give it a like. I would appreciate it very much. It helps us attract more views for the channel. Subscribe for future commentary, comic book news, and reviews. And don't forget to ring the bell for notifications. If you want to talk comics, movies, and much, much more, you can follow me on Twitter at Wes_from_TC. With that, Salamat Po, and I'm out.